And what's
good,
up?
brother?
What's up,
Welcome.
Rev?
Welcome to Thursday night's Random Thoughts with the Rev and Brother
Yes,
Jonesy.
sir.
Sir.
It's good to
Give a
be
shot.
back. I missed a
You
week,
know,
but
dude. You left me hanging with Tony for 2 days in a row, bro. Nobody else showed up, dude. Like,
oh
Hombre was,
man,
being super dad, like I say, and then it was
Yeah.
just me and Tony.
I'm sorry. I did hop on for a little bit on Friday, but I know. I'm sorry,
Where is
Rev.
Red Stapler Productions when I need you? Come
I
on.
know. He's right here now.
So let's kick this pig, man. We got a special guest, first time on the Thursday
Oh,
show.
real quick. Proud sponsor Willow's.
Willow Spring Seasoning. So naturally, you think it's the 70s.
Discount code in the chat. I'm telling you, it's some of the best stuff. I keep posting content with it daily, or at least a few times a week. I absolutely love it. Let's go. Hey, this Grill Life. What's up, T?
What's good, brother?
We'll kind of do like a thing like Tony's been doing. We'll do comment recaps and stuff. So
wrap up every 15 minutes or so. Give or take.
Yeah.
Cool.
Hey,
So
Robert.
before we bring on our special guest, as people may know, the Rev has decided to become a blacksmith because I'm stupid and I don't have enough shit to do. And this is the latest creation from the White Trash Forgeries.
Oh, sick, dude.
As I promised, I would show it to you.
Yep.
Yeah. So this week we have a special guest, Brother Charn. Really great dude. He's a professor at the local university here in Flagstaff, Arizona at NAU.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited. We got to chatting a little bit, probably a little bit too long in the backstage, but
we do what we do.
Yeah, really, really cool. Excited for this.
Absolutely.
Totally different than most Dude Network kind of stuff, which is cool, man. That's what I love. I love the
kind of the point of the Random Thoughts, bro.
Exactly. So I'm glad to be a part of.
Absolutely.
So, without further ado, Rev's good buddy Charn.
Yeah.
How's it going?
What's good, brother? Love the shirt,
Living the dream.
Love the shirt.
Thank you. You always got to rep Army, cavalry in particular.
Yay! Yeah, thanks for your service, man. We're big fans of vets here. Big fans.
Thanks. That's what I think got Mikey and I together at some point. We he just had vet written all over him. I mean, you can't miss it on Mikey.
Okay, so I got to hear this. That was kind of crazy because you guys are both like very close roots in the East Coast in the New York area, and then both in the Army, and then both somehow end up in Flagstaff, but very different paths there.
That's
putting it mildly, bro.
Yeah, I mean, I think I found my way. I was in New York for a while and then moved down to Florida, back to New York for college. And then, Army all over the place, Alabama. My wife was in Georgia for a while, Texas. We went to Colorado, Kansas, Iraq a couple times. And then when we finished, we went back to Florida for school and found my way out to Boston, back to the Northeast where I did not want to go. I was kind of Northeast out. It's a different kind of lifestyle. It's just rush nonstop. Yeah. And I didn't really want to go back to that. And, I saw a video of Flagstaff back in like 2013. And I've done a little bit of ultra running over the last 10, 12 years. And it was an ultra runner. And I saw like the mountains, saw the pine trees. I was like, man, if only there was a college out there. Lo and behold, there was. So it took 8 years to wait for a job opening and for us to be qualified for the job. And so I kept on watching for years. And finally the job opened up and we pretty much jumped at it because this is the kind of place for the 6-year-old now. this is the kind of place we wanted to raise our kid. Cause I grew up in a city on Long Island. My mom's from Brooklyn, and I think we just, we wanted more outdoor space. We wanted just to,
Preach.
yeah, exactly, man. We just wanted to be outdoors. I mean, I just rode my bike to work, it's, whatever time, 6:20 here. And, that's what I wanted. I barely get in a car, and that's the dream for me.
Yeah. I want to live where, there's animals getting in my trash instead of, whoever passing through or whatever.
Absolutely.
I grew up in the city too, man. Lower East Side of Manhattan, down by the Bowery. Spent a lot of time in places I shouldn't have been.
I've been to the Bowery a couple times. Yeah.
That was, 316 South Bowery, bro. CBGB's the original punk bar.
Yeah.
There you go.
But now I can go out of my porch every morning and see like pine trees.
Yeah.
Dude, it's amazing, right? I mean, this place, it's, every time someone comes here, I'm like, this is what you get like for living here. You don't get paid great, I would say, in general. But you get this, you get the Flagstaff experience, and that to me is it's worth more than any paycheck.
It's quieter, it's slower than living in the city. You can relax.
That's the dream, man.
That's the big thing. When I came out here for my interview, we went to a restaurant, and the hostess like sauntered to our table, like she just slow walked it, and I turned to my wife and I was like, this is where I want to be, because New York, everything is like go 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 go.
You gotta do it now.
Boston was essentially the same way, and this woman, we walked all of 30 feet and it took like 40 seconds, and I was like, this is where I want to be. I was like, I want to be at this pace of life, and it's great. I mean, it just gives you so much more time with the family and all that kind of stuff. It's wonderful.
Absolutely. So you're a professor here at the local university. So what do you teach? Let's get into some of that.
Yeah. So I teach leadership and ethics. So I teach leadership to seniors in the management field, right? So we try to really focus on all practical skills, things they're going to need to do. Anything from performance counseling to firing somebody. We do an activity, and it's funny because these are all young adults, but kids in the same regard. And we do this activity where you have to counsel a person and fire them. And without fail, every year people look at their freaking shoes, right? And we're acting here. And I'm like, look, like you can't look at your shoes. Like, we got to start making this is pretend. Like, you got to look them in the eyes. And so, we spend a semester really trying to make sure people feel confident in leadership roles. They're not going to take a leadership role right away. They got to work through it. But what I love about it is students come back, even during the semester, like, man, I started using this skill at my job, and like, it's amazing, right? And that's what I want. I want people to walk away being more confident and not just full of, theory and what you normally get in a lot of classes. So yeah, it's been pretty good.
The interesting perspective I have is like, I've been a manager plenty of times. I got a 25 long career. I've fired tons of stupid college kids in my life, bro.
Yep.
And, it's not a skill that was afforded to me. No one taught me how to do it. It was like, you just have to do it.
That's the thing. Like, people, there's a lot of concerns with college in general, whether it be like the rising cost of tuition, whether you're getting practical skills. And I think, business schools, this is not a pitch for business schools, but, moving forward, like, you got to give students something they can use right away. Right. And just like Mikey said, like, you can learn all this stuff along the way, right? But if we can give them a head start, right, and actually work on like, hey, here are things that have worked for me. I bring in guest speakers all the time, tell them their experiences, tell them my experiences, and then use some research-backed ideas. Like, this is the best way to do something. You're just teaching them, you're letting them fail in the classroom as opposed to failing with a real human being. And that's what it comes down to, right? Like, if you fire someone and do it in a terrible way, that person didn't deserve, well, some people do, but most people don't deserve that, right? And if we can get them to practice in the classroom, that's a success for me. So they're not using people as test dummies.
Yeah. Okay, and that practical application. I have older kids who are in their 20s and stuff, and that's kind of the thing is life skills. They talk about going to college, like, what do you want to do? What do you want to learn? And one of them kind of stares at me like a dog at an answering machine. It's like, well, you have to have something that applies to life. So he decided he was going to join the army. So there's that.
That's a great learning ground, right? I mean, that's the kind of experience that, like, if if I hadn't had my time in the military, I think my my skill as a professor would be a lot reduced in the classroom, right? Because I can bring in those stories like, this is why you need to know this, right? This is a real case. This is just from some textbook or some article.
Mhm.
Like, this is real world experience where I've had to lead someone in this weird situation, this extreme condition. Let's talk about why we do it that way. And that's what students latch onto, right? They want to hear your experiences, but also say like, yeah, here. And I tell them how I screwed up. I have, Mikey knows in the Army, we screw up all the time. In life, we screw up all the time. And they want to hear how you messed up. And you gotta be an open book with these guys, and these kids, because they want to know how to do well. And we were talking in the pre-show, the students at NAU, they're not coming into classroom as like, these, green employees. They've all worked, and they've worked for a long time. So they know good leadership, they know bad leadership, and most of them want to do a good job, like in their current jobs and in future jobs. So they get invested in the class pretty quickly, which is pretty awesome.
Hey, we've talked about this in the past so there's a difference between working here and working on the East Coast. Like, yeah, one of our favorite sayings back east, at least, especially working in the restaurant industry, and I got a lot of family who are in construction. It fell off the truck, bro.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
That's the thing. I still, to this day, I totally still do that. Like, I still do with Teamsters on a regular basis, man. Like, I'm the overnight guy at the restaurant I work with, so I got to deal with delivery guys sometimes. And I'm like, yo, so what do you got? What fell off the truck today? And a couple of them are like, what do you got? It's just the thing.
Yeah. Do you find that works awesome as much here as it did in the Northeast?
No, absolutely not.
Yeah, I'm about to say it's a cultural thing and geographically cultural.
Absolutely. There's two guys. One of them's from Jersey, and one of them, he's probably going to retire in another year or two. But he was like a legit Teamster for like 20 years before his wife wanted to retire out here. And he works as a short haul trucker for the food service companies. And he's totally like an Italian East Coast guy where he's like, don't worry about it, kid. Like it fell off the truck. Don't worry about
it. That's to me, that's super interesting though, because, we were talking about the pre-show again, like I teach ethics as well. And I'm the director of the Ethics and Leadership Institute out here. And it's interesting because when I used to teach ethics at my last university, we had students from a bunch of different cultures, a bunch of different countries where like bribery is totally okay, right? Like it's not like it's like built into it, right? You want to get stuff done, you have to bribe people, right? And there's no ethical problems, right? Like it's just, this is what it is, right? And so we have that geographically in the US to a certain extent and what people are okay with. But what's also interesting is some of that at the face value, and this is what I always tell my students, is like, and this is kind of taken from a book, which is like, when people think about ethics, they're like, oh, should I punch this person in the face or shouldn't I, right? But that's bogus. We know the real question that we have to face is, do I punch him in the face or do I punch him in the gut? That's what ethics is, right? Like there's no good answer, right? You have to choose between often like this gray area. And that's what I think I connect with my students that way, because I don't spoon feed them like, oh, there's this right answer, this wrong answer. It's like, no, there's two wrong answers or there's two barely right answers. And often that's the situation we find ourselves in, and that's where classes get fun. But with this kind of thing that Mikey's talking about, you got to wonder, like some of that, especially in the restaurant industry, from my understanding of talking with Mikey, is like that might just be part of the normal functioning of the organization, right? You want your deliveries on time, right? You want to get the best fish in the fish market in New York. Like you have to have those connections and those relationships. Well, the question is, and where's that line, right? And that's what makes it so difficult, that in some industries, like that gray is where you operate, and it might actually be necessary to live in there, right? And that's why I think ethics is fun. When we think about, oh, this is right, this is wrong, we don't murder someone, got it, right? But when we get to the gray, like that's interesting. And Mikey's probably doing a great thing for his organization, right? Because he's making all those deliveries. Mikey's deliveries are always on time, and if there's a shortage, who gets the stuff? Mikey does. And so this is one of those things that, and that's why I love business too. Like I could have just gone psychology, but like you go business, this is exciting, right? Like there's
I was
nonstop.
psych.
You were psych? Oh man.
Yeah.
Hey, it's funny you mentioned like
I barbecue and I'm an electrician now, so there you go.
Dude, that's great, man.
You know, it's funny that you mentioned like the fish deliveries and stuff, because that was the thing back east. You know, you'd have to show up at like 2 a.m. when all the boats come in. But any restaurant that I worked at, we had a leg up on it. My grandfather was a dock worker and a longshoreman for like 30 years. So he would be like directing stuff, be like, I give him a call and be like, all right, so this is what I'm looking for. Where do I go? Who do I talk to? And then he'd make a phone call and, you know, you grease the wheels, so to speak, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So my uncle and aunt have been in the food industry their whole lives. I mean, he started off as a waiter, now is managing, you know, like country club restaurants, things like that. Has been going through the whole chain and moving around the country because it's hard to find work in that area, right? And it's not guaranteed. But his best friend growing up worked in a family who was deep into the fish business up there. So I'm sure you've actually dealt with them at some point, Mikey. There's no doubt. Yeah.
And that's kind of the thing. Like I said, you know, the other thing is like, I know a lot of guys in construction back east. You know, do you think there's a reason why a square foot of concrete costs $900 in New York City?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's funny because like that, it's so funny when we think about like the cultural, like geographic. So I was doing a case study with students here, and it was involved the construction industry. And at the end, there's like 4 guys like coming after this individual, right? And I'm like, this is clearly the mafia. And my whole class is like, why do you say that? And I was like, well, I mean, like, I didn't think I have to complain this. Like, there's a couple industries that are generally associated with the mafia. But it was funny because almost all of my students had no idea. But coming from the Northeast, like you're thinking like vending machines, construction, like there are certain industries
Laundry.
that we just associate. But I had to explain this to them of like, but they had, coming from the Southwest, they had no idea. Like it was a total like, yeah, it's just really interesting to think about that geographical knowledge that you bring with you to these places.
Yeah.
You know, I worked in a couple of
because they end up retired out there in Witsec. So
yeah. You know, it's funny you say that, Johnsy. I worked at a couple of restaurants here in Arizona that were definitely Italian organization run. And like I was the manager, so when we closing up, I'd be making sure everything's turned off. And like some guy would show up with a truck and there'd be full of cartons of cigarettes. So if you look on the bottom of cigarettes, there's a weird stamp on there. That's your state tax that they have to pay to sell it. So we'd be getting ones from like Missouri, Utah and shit.
Yeah.
And like
these are from Wyoming.
Like, yeah. You know, the owner would like, you know, break off a couple $100 and be like, you didn't see nothing. I'm like, sure didn't. Can I get a carton of cigarettes, bro?
Yeah.
You know, like even these days it happens on a really small scale, but it still happens.
Oh yeah,
absolutely, yeah.
Well, let's say what's up to some of the people watching.
Yeah,
we got
comment wrap up.
We got another fellow Arizonian.
The Grill Life. Good to see you.
My buddy Robert. He's local here.
Nice.
What's up, Doobie? Oh, the man himself. Here we go. Johnsy looks hella cold. Hello, fellas. Yeah, it's a little chilly out here in Cali.
What's good, brother Tony?
Damon, what's up, brother?
Damon, what's good, man? How are you doing?
Loot made it to the random show. Let's go.
What's up, man? So, you know, I think the whole ethics side of what you do is super interesting, just from my life experience and doing what I've done and shit, because like I said, I work with tons of college students, and exactly what you're saying is like, they don't have concept of like what I'm talking about half of the time.
It's I mean, it's a key thing to talk about, right? Because, you know, we were saying before, it's kind of common sense to a lot of people. But sometimes you get first time workers and they don't, again, I think students think black, white, because everything they've been told growing up is like, this is right, this is wrong. But it's just not that way, right? I mean, like I was telling you guys in the pre-show, the university I used to teach at was $70,000 a year to go there, right? So these kids' parents were paying $280,000 just for tuition, not for housing. Like, it's just crazy. And the only time it's nuts, right? So the only time I felt like I didn't know what to say while I was teaching was talking to these students about ethics, and they just couldn't get this idea. And I was like, look, like, if the dean pulled some strings, got his daughter who didn't deserve to be there into the school, would that be okay? And they're like, yeah, of course, because he's the dean. He can use his position however he wants.
Yeah.
And then they told me, like, well, my dad's a contractor or like runs a construction company. He takes wood home with him all the time. And I was like, that's not okay either. Like, but I just couldn't get it across to him. So I started teaching the shoot, don't shoot scenario I had from when I was in Iraq and tell him how like ethics were super important that day. And 2 people ended up living that day because of ethical training I'd had and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
When I came here, NAU students, they're hard workers in and out of the classroom. They've put time in the workplace, a lot in the service industry, and they know if something bad is going down, it's usually going to affect them in some way, right? And they have a really ethical sense because they've been there. They have that experience. And to Mikey's point, they still make mistakes. But I'll tell you, the business students, I don't work with a ton of other students at NAU, but the business students have good heads on their shoulder, and they're working. And they're working through 4 years of college. A lot of them are paying. Like I had a woman in my class who was like, I wish I would have done painting as her major, right? But she's like, I needed to have a job that I can make money with. So she did like basically a major and a minor. So she's like, I got a management major. I'm going to do painting. And I was like, what do your parents think about this? She's like, I'm paying for everything. I don't care what they think. And that's what I'm talking about. Like these are the kind of students we're working with here who are making it happen. So it's hopefully those students will do better for you in the end, Mikey.
Where are the rest of those young people?
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I try to teach these kids is if you got my 6, I got yours. Like if you're going to help me out, I'm going to help you out.
Exactly.
Like, and if you fuck me over, you're on your own, dude, and I'm not the guy you fuck over.
100%.
That's it too, though, right? Like we call it like organizational politics, right? And this is one of the things I study, and it's this idea. A lot of kids, this is probably the one downside of perhaps the students' backgrounds, right? Like at my last university, they all got politics. They got it. They understood it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. They understand backstabbing and back deals and
exactly. These students, I don't know if they've had as much experience or their parents have because they've always been entry-level workers or moving up, right? There's a few who are in manager positions, right? But I don't think they've had to play the politics game. And I think that's what, someone like Mikey can give to them is like, look, like we're all working together. We're not working necessarily for the organization all the time. We're working together to keep ourselves as an employee base together. Yes. And so I think that's important to have that kind of training. We actually talk about that in class and get that idea across to them, hopefully.
Dude, I try and tell people in the workforce, I don't have to say where I'm at now, but they get it. But, it's like, dude, like the better we all work, the easier this all goes for everybody.
Yes.
And the more, unfortunately, if you're building someone else's dream, working for someone else, and you make them more money, it's easier for them to give you more money.
Real simple.
But I'm talking like even like 10, almost 15 years ago now. I was working as a telecommunication lineman, and the yard was at the boss's house. He had this big property with shop and everything. Well, then these guys would come and see he had a couple Harleys, a boat, this, that, this huge house, blah, 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 and they're like, oh, I only get paid $18 an hour. I'm like, I started with him at 16, so I don't want to hear it, Yeah. And they're like, this is crap. And it's like, dude, you realize that he started this company in 83, when your dad was in freaking high school. And he went bankrupt twice. Like, like just go, get out of here. And I see it like even now, guys will show up and because they have like, their dad was an electrician or they maybe took a little course somewhere or something. They come like, I have experience. Like, no, I know what that, And then I come in on the night shift to run hundreds of feet of pipe with drops down to motors and all this stuff. And I show up and they come walking out like, I wired up 20 starters today. Oh, 5 wires? Cool. And they're all color coded, man. Thank goodness you guys came in for the day.
One of the interesting things.
And it's just like, where did this entitlement stuff?
In your career long enough, whether it's blue collar, whether it's in the service industry, whatever, if you have good owners and good upper management, it's not that you just have a work ethic. It's that they understand and respect the experience. So I'm a trainer at the establishment I work at. And every time they like go through the hiring process, whatever, and I'll train a person for like a day or two. And then both owners will call me and be like, what do you think? Like, what you talk to this guy, you know, you've had a chance to feel him out. What do you think? And it's either a go or no go, man. There's been plenty of times I'm like, that guy's not going to work out. And they'll fire the guy. They'll be like, hey, too bad it's not going to work out. And then I'll find somebody else.
But see, that's important, I think. And like, I think it's absolute crap in some areas, like especially in blue collar jobs, you know, workforce where you're building stuff or whatever. You get these guys out of college who learned how to do electrical schematics on a computer in a CAD program where everything adds up perfectly because you told it to. And then they come out and they don't understand why this job that's, you know, 100 or a couple hundred feet of pipe took you a couple days. And you're like, dude, there's workers here. There's live machines. Like, I can't shut down. Like, do you even understand what we do? And they just go, I don't understand why you couldn't get it done. And
well,
I just want to strangle them.
One of the biggest things, you're looking at the schematics for the wiring of like a house, right? Well, you're not looking at like where the HVAC guys are running, doing the 10 knocking. You're not looking at where all the pipes are, you know, the schmuck drywallers who literally just drywalled and mudded all of your boxes in. Yeah. You don't see any of that. All you see is what you're working on.
Yeah. And like, I'm an industrial and commercial electrician. You know, I've done very little residential. And so most of our stuff is already in pre-existing plants, you know, like unless a huge plant is built, which that happens, like, and we get that job, then we're there and it's cool. I love brand new builds, but 90% of it is like, hey, this motor's not running and we need it to never stop. You know, you go there, you find out this needs to happen. Or like, hey, we need to upgrade this whole system, but we need all of it to keep working while you're doing it. Like, all right, you know.
You know,
that's the thing though. Like, I think when people complain about colleges in particular, like there's a lot of this theoretical where it's like, oh, this always works out. X always equals Z, whatever it may be.
Yes,
right.
Yeah.
And it's important to give them those situations where it's like, this is kind of with ethics again. There's no good answer. You have to make do with it. And I think that's something that my time in the Army and as a leader in the Army, like anyone in the Army, you figure out like, you just got to make it work, right? Whether it be with duct tape or whether it be just, you know, there's an idea in the Army called commander's intent that Mikey probably remembers is right. Like before you go onto like, I will defend commander's intent. Mikey can tear it apart. But like to me, you get all these orders and like, you know, the plan goes out the window as soon as you get shot at, right? So there's always the commander's intent. And like the idea is like if you know what the commander wants to do, which is like at the end, we're gonna take this village, right? Mm-hmm. Who cares what the plan was? You got to make do because the plan fell apart, right? And so, like, you needed this idea of like, what's the end goal here? And as a leader, how can you help people get to that point? Like, it's a simple idea that the Army mastered, and people who've been in it like get that idea of like, yeah, it's not going to go out perfectly, but we're going to get there somehow.
Yeah, exactly.
And that gets lost in translation from people just sitting behind a computer and books and the workforce. Which is, I'm not saying it can't, you know, that everybody's an idiot because you went to college and learned about it. No, of course not. Yep. But I think it'd be very beneficial for somehow to incorporate. You have to go, okay, you designed this, you did all this, now go do it.
Yeah.
Work around everything that I'm going to have to experience. So you understand, you know, like there's lots of times where you have to violate the company's rules, your own safety rules for yourself and OSHA rules. So, you know, all the time to get the job done, or they're just like, oh, well, if you can't do it, I'll just find someone else who's willing to not care about anything. It's just like, all right. So you're all like, you guys' ethics suck.
You know,
that's the idea. Go for it, Mikey. Yeah.
You know, one of the things that, especially being in the workforce for so many years, I think, you know, for decades we had this concept that you need a college degree.
Mhm.
Like you have to have that piece of paper to make something of yourself. And
I bought in a little bit.
For a lot of us, we have that perspective like, all right, so culinary school, right? I worked at plenty of restaurants where I was a line cook and there's an open kitchen. And then, when you get hired or they're doing the hiring process, they give you the tour of the kitchen. And you see guys showing up in their like crisp whites and stuff. And you're like, that guy is not going to work out here. Like, I'll give you a perfect example. I was working at this one restaurant and we did a bunch of catering and stuff. And as a favor to one of the owners, they hired their nephew, who was a culinary student. He went to CIA down in Scottsdale. Yeah. And we had this big, it's called the steamer. It's wired into the electrical and the water and the plumbing and shit. And you steam stuff. That's what it's for. And you have these perf pans. And his job, all he had to do was steam all the vegetables for his catering gig. And he literally had like 5 cases of frozen, pre-cut, pre-mixed vegetables, a stack of pans, and the kid is looking through his notebook from culinary school and had a steamed vegetable.
Oh, yeah.
And that's kind of the perspective, man. A lot of us, in a lot of ways are like, you have to prove to me you can do this job. I don't care about that certificate. It doesn't mean anything to me.
Yeah, man. I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think that whole lie of like you need a college degree, and again, like I'm a college professor. I went through way too many years of school to get here. Like, I mean, so I'm definitely part of that system, but education is going to change a lot in the next 5 to 10 years. I know people always say that, but it's going to have to stay viable, because about 18 years ago, people stopped having babies, and those people are those kids don't exist to go to college in the next few years. It's called the enrollment cliff. It's going to shut down a whole bunch of colleges across the country in about 2 years. We've already seen it a little bit, but there's a whole bunch of colleges going to shut down. And in my view, it's going to have to be like a trade school, right? Where like before, when you went to, become an electrician, you go and you learn how to get your apprenticeship and keep on moving through, right? I think we're going to see that. We're going to see some of the more theoretical parts. This is just Charn's thoughts. We're going to see some of the more theoretical divisions in colleges shut down, and we're going to see things like accounting, management, like things that are like,
I hope so.
We're going to train people, and they're going to have to get practical skills. They can't just be like, hey, sit in this, like in my class,
liberal arts for 10 years.
Yeah, and like, don't get me wrong, like I'm a huge fan of philosophy. Like, I mean, I think you want to be a philosophy student, that's great, but recognize what your job options are afterwards, right?
Yeah.
And like, I think
you're going to
teach,
or
that's
you're
it.
Gonna teach, yeah. But like, I think everyone should be required to take like 1 or 2 philosophy classes just to get that idea. And like,
I've read some books too.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like everyone has that. But the idea of like a college professor sitting up on the stage and lecturing for 70 minutes is worthless. Like in my class, we spend the whole time, we are talking, we're doing activities, trying to get this experience together. And I think we're going to see college and particularly business schools transition fully to that. So it's like a trade school. Like you come out with a set of skills that are marketable right off the bat. And, I think our placement rates kind of speak to that. Business schools are investing in like, how do we get people placed in jobs and get them ready for jobs? And I think we're doing that because we need it. You need to come out with a skill set. And I think we're doing that now.
Yeah,
but
because otherwise I think schools are just robbing people.
Like, if they're letting you go to a program
kind of like
not
my school.
What's the point of spending $70,000 a year if you have absolutely no transferable skills?
I agree. I mean, it's a real problem. And
that was one of the biggest things. I was talking to my 20-year-old about that before he decided to join the Army. I said, so what are you going to do with your life, son? What are you going to, he works at a gas station. I mean, are you going to work at a gas station your entire life? Like, you got to learn something. So then he went to the recruiter's office, and then I went with him because, those are the used car salesmen of the fucking Army. I'm like, it's not going to happen.
Sell a fucking dream, man.
But, they give them all of the, you could be a Cav Scout, you could be combat infantry and shit. I'm like, no, that defeats the purpose. Like, you need transferable skills. So he's allegedly going to go be a wheeled vehicle mechanic.
Nice.
That's
good.
I work with one. I
Nice.
work with one who, and then another guy was sonar tech, and my teacher was like a nuke sub guy, electrical.
Navy
So-
boys.
Navy.
Well, two
boo.
of them. One of them was Army. He was a mechanic in the Army, or maybe Marines, but I think Army. I'm pretty sure Army.
I'm cool with
Yeah.
Marines too. They actually have a job, unlike the Navy.
Ouch.
Oh. You see the Army Navy game, bro?
Of course, that's the biggest day of the year for me, man. That's my Christmas.
I'm just saying. All right, so this is a
Yeah, that
question
was-
that I asked.
How bad
Yeah.
was it? How bad
Oh,
was it?
we won. We won.
Yeah.
It was not a great game though. Both teams were pretty awful this year. We just happened
Oh,
to pull it out double overtime though, so it got pretty exciting.
Oh, sick! What a good game, man.
It was.
Yeah.
I think it's been going on for like 109 years. It had never gone to overtime, and it goes to double overtime this year. So
Yep. That's pretty cool.
What?
yeah, it was epic.
Oh, it was a Merry Christmas for Charn then.
Oh yeah, man, it was. And my wife also went to West Point, so we both.
Oh, okay.
We're all there watching. It's a
right
big
on.
thing in our house.
So there's a couple questions. We've had a couple of other vets on the show. Zach Lowers and then Artillery Works Company. This is a question that I
Okay.
try to ask all of our brothers in arms. Best MRE, worst MRE.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
here we go.
we've talked about this.
We sure have, brother.
Yeah, so I think you and I have a little bit of a difference because you're a cheese tortellini, right?
That was delicious.
Whatever the cheese ones. But my first MRE ever was spaghetti with meat sauce, as it's called.
That's all right.
And
Yeah, that
that's
one's
been my
not
favorite
bad.
one ever
That's
since.
not
Like
bad.
I love it. I think though, I know you've talked about the Vomlet being the least favorite, but I think the Five Fingers of Death for me, the Five Fingers of Death were just.
That sounds so horrific.
And the bean
dude.
chili sauce. Yeah, that's pretty rough.
Oh
dude.
yeah, it's brutal. I mean, there are a couple bad ones, but so I'm on the search and rescue team here now, and so like looking for
Nice.
MREs, like if you're gonna bring something out there, I'd definitely go for the spaghetti with meat sauce or the cheese tortellini anytime. And
You
you're
know
talking
what
about the
else
kosher
it is?
MREs, which I'd never had before.
I was. So, this being Hanukkah, this is a great time to bring this up. So, if you're Jewish and you join the service,
Okay.
when you put that down on your paperwork, they have to offer you kosher options to eat.
Oh, okay.
So they make kosher MREs.
That's what you're
and it
saying,
had-
yeah.
It has blue Hebrew lettering on it, and it has like the K in the circle and the U in the circle, and
Yeah.
it has very strict standards for preparation and ingredients.
Probably
Yeah.
way better.
Way better, bro.
way better.
Yeah, one of the
Oh.
awful ones that we also had, aside from the Vomlet and the Five Fingers of Death. Do you remember the meatloaf and brown onion gravy?
I absolutely do.
The
I
brake
absolutely-
pads, bro.
Oh
The
god,
brake
yeah.
pads.
I was
the
eating that
names
one
are
day.
great.
We were in a patrol base and it's just training, and I was eating it, and like no all light discipline, so I had no light. So I'm trying to get this thing, and then the attack starts, and like I moved and I just spilled the gravy all over my BDUs.
Oh,
and I was like,
brutal.
I've made a horrible mistake because you smell like
Made a
friggin-
horrible.
This is
Smell like
this is
friggin'
awful.
dog food.
Oh, it was awful.
Dude.
I was out there for like 3 days, and I was like, this is just terrible.
Just miserable.
Yeah.
And when we were in the backs before we went live, we were talking about how you guys are involved with the Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts with your kids.
Yeah.
And so one year we decided not to go back. When my dad was still doing Scouts, they decided to take the kids on a 50-mile backpacking trip for Scout camp instead of going Scout
Nope.
camp. It was
Wow.
closer to 60
I've met our
miles. Yeah,
scouts. Nope.
we did a bunch of the Pacific Crest Trail, and he talked me into going with him, right? And that's what we had to enjoy that whole week was MREs, man. Someone found a whole truck, got us a whole freaking truckload of them,
Yeah.
and I was
Brutal.
like you said, like when you get to the ones like, dude, this is actually edible. You're like searching through and trying to hoard them.
There was a term for that Mikey might remember.
I know.
When people would cut through the boxes and look for them.
Yep. I told
Yeah.
it's rat something, dude.
Oh yeah, you're right on it.
Yeah. I totally don't remember. The rat
It's
fuck.
just like That's it. Yeah.
The rat
Oh,
fuck.
well, that's me. I'm an
Yeah.
RF,
Yeah.
well, big RF on that trip, bro.
And that was like if you could catch someone doing that, they were out of the platoon's good graces. You did not want to see someone
Oh,
go
for
into the
sure.
MRE
Yeah, when it's a
boxes. That
team
was,
like that. But when I'm basically.
oh yeah, no. I get it.
I was teaching the wilderness survival and like and those type of merit badges on that trip, and I was like, nah, man, I'm sleeping in shelters with you guys. Like, I'm doing all this stuff. I'm getting some of this good food.
Oh, dude, absolutely. No, once you're an adult, they can suffer through the MREs. Give them that experience. We should be eating the good stuff.
It was
100%.
funny because this guy came up and met us like halfway through the week. Came up another trail, met us. And because we were doing a bunch of the Pacific Crest Trail, and there's tons of trails that lead up to it and stuff.
That's amazing.
Unbelievably beautiful. And he's like a really good fly fisherman. And he fished out like, I don't know, like 5 or 7 little fresh brook trouts, dude. And I was talking about it the whole time. Like, I wish I had a different rod because there was never anywhere to like set up my spin rod and throw it. And all shallow and stuff, and these kids were like, "Oh, I don't eat fish." Hey, those brook trouts were gobbled up like they were fresh brownies or something.
Yep.
Right?
It was hilarious.
So you brought up the rat fuck. Do you remember what the Bravo Foxtrot is?
I don't.
You remember the Blue Falcon, bro?
Oh, the Blue Falcon. Yeah, absolutely. I remember Blue Falconing. Absolutely.
Oh,
okay. Fair enough.
I hope that's nothing like a blue waffle or anything.
No. You want to explain what the Blue Falcon, aka the Bravo Foxtrot, is?
So I never heard it referred to as Bravo Foxtrot, but anyone who took advantage of the platoon or did something out of the for themselves, we always called them a Blue Falcon. They were just kind of after. I always took it as like an Air Force type jab, right? Like you belong in the Air Force, but yeah, you Blue Falcon.
Dude, I fucking love you, Army guys.
That's the guy, and there's always one in every platoon, dude.
There's always a Blue Falcon every single time.
Dude.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Some little spoiled princess who thinks he needs the whatever.
Yep.
Yeah.
He's the guy sleeping on guard duty. He's the guy, rat fucking the MREs. He's the guy fucking everybody else over. Yeah.
Taking too long a shower, some other crap, dude. Just whatever. Yeah.
You want to explain what Sharon? You want to explain what the E4 Mafia is?
Oh boy.
Yeah. So, as a
you guys have your own mafia. Oh, here we go.
Yeah. So I was a lieutenant through captain during my time in, and the E4 Mafia was always well known to the officer corps because and to the NCO for that matter, but. So you have, private first class, and then you'd go up to, well, I guess they didn't have corporal anymore, so it went right to
E4.
So you went right to specialist then, right, for E4?
Yep.
Where did E3 go? Now that I think about it, private first class.
They went. So private basic, when you're in basic training, is an E1.
Oh, that's right. Then E2 for once you graduate. That's right. Yeah.
Is,
private first class.
PFC. And then
E4. Then E4. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So, anyways, E4 Mafia was all the specialists who were right below NCO, so they aren't a sergeant yet, right?
Yeah.
So they have rank, they have time in service, but very little to no leadership responsibilities.
Oh yeah, my niche, bud.
So you can live or die by the E4 Mafia, in my opinion, as a leader. And so I was very well aware, and I would like to think awesome. The E4 Mafia supported me as a lieutenant. Like you need to get something done, they will get it done. You just say the word, and the right E4 to get the Mafia motivated, it'll get done. At the same time, if the E4 Mafia doesn't think you're treating him well, it won't get done, and your time as a lieutenant will not be enjoyable.
That's so awesome.
Is that a pretty good rundown, Mikey?
Sure is. Can anyone guess what rank the Rev was when he was in the Army?
Let me see. E4?
And that's how I found out about this fucking kosher MREs, dude. Like,
yeah, they know everything.
Did you go switch to? Did you put on a yarmulke?
No, one of the guys in my squad was Jewish, and he'd go to temple every Sunday.
Dude,
that was part of the thing. I was like, yo,
I'm
Go
not
pour
trying
us
to
a couple
offend
cases of
anybody, but I
MREs.
would have converted real quick. I would have converted real quick.
And that was one
I
of the
still can't
things.
believe I missed them.
When our butter bar would walk in, we wouldn't have to like stand or salute. He'd literally walk over to me and my battle buddy Garcia, because they're both E4s, and he's like, "Hey, I need a favor." And we're like,
Yeah.
What's that 4-day weekend looking like, bro?
Yeah.
That was the biggest thing,
No,
because
sure.
that was one of the negotiating points, because they could always offer you like a 3 or 4 day weekend.
Yep.
Oh,
And it was like, so what's that 4-day weekend like?
time off, baby. I want time off.
So it's one of those things too. Like you go back to the ethics side of the house too, to like bring it full circle. Like if we were if your E4s and NCO Corps liked you, and you said, hey, look, we have a motor pool layout where you lay out all the equipment that you own, right? And there's a
Oof.
saying in the Army that
Holy
there are no, it's tons of, but there's a saying that there are no thieves in the Army. Everyone's just trying to get their stuff back.
Mhm.
And so like.
Tactically reallocated, bro.
Yeah.
Oh, dude,
so,
that's
like,
awesome.
If you tell your E4 Mafia, look, like we need all the antennas. If you're missing 2 antennas, there will be 2 antennas at your layout, right?
That's
And like you'll have everything. So you got to be really like you got to know what you're saying. It's like, look, like if you say, hey, I need everything there, and they like you, everything will be there. It might not be at the other platoon's vehicles anymore, right? But to be fair, next time that platoon has a layout, all your antennas are gone too. It just gets traded around from layout to layout. Like
that's awesome.
it's a thing. So you got to decide how you're going to say these things, because if you just say get it, it will be gotten if they like you.
That's
I'll just say my layouts were always full. I'll throw it out that way.
Hey now.
We did that with an entire Humvee one time, bro.
Mm-hmm. I don't doubt it, man. How'd you do it with the serial numbers?
They're just painted on, dude. Like no one's checking tags and shit.
Yeah, so you just re-stenciled it?
Yeah. I mean, you just talk to
yeah.
one of the guys who has a stencil machine and be like, yo. Like here's a carton of cigarettes and a case of Rippets, dude. Fucking. And when they were done doing the inspection, we just drove it right back and fucking put the old stencil back on.
Hey, by Rippets, are you talking about those energy drinks?
Yep. Yeah, that was a currency in Iraq. I mean, that was.
Serious?
Oh man, like
dude, they're in every dollar store here now.
I know,
dude. Like at the time though, like at least in like 2000, Mikey was there before me, but in 2007, like Rippets were always in short supply and high demand. Like you could get a lot accomplished with Rippets. That was, I mean, I don't know if they even taste good, but I love them. Yeah, Rippets were huge. If you could I would say I've seen pallets disappear and reappear in people's housing areas, as it were, and that was definitely that's probably the best example of the E4 Mafia right there.
That's exactly what a mafia does. That's what the real mafia does.
That's fantastic. I mean, it was.
What we used to do is take bottles of mouthwash and scope and shit, and have someone back stateside empty them out.
Yep.
And then fill it up with vodka or gin and fucking food dye, and then heat shrink the fucking thing back on, and just send it to us.
Yeah, so that was you remember General Order Number 1, which is no drinking, no sex, nothing like that in Iraq, and
nothing fun.
Yeah, nothing fun. And we had a pilot of all things. So I flew helicopters while I was there, and one of our pilots. Yeah, it was pretty cool. One of our pilots put a false bottom on one of their tough boxes they were sending over. And during one of the inspections, definitely got caught. And this guy, it was just liquor, just straight liquor. I mean, bottles upon bottles. And it didn't go over too well. Best story with him, though, is while he was back home, right, because he couldn't go, he ended up getting court-martialed. But they gave him an order, like no drinking, like you can't drink, right? Like just so you know, you have a standing order from your commander. And they caught him one night off base in a strip club with 2 bottles. He was double fisting, right? And the guy was so far gone that he sees the commander, drops both bottles, and runs out the back door and starts just sprinting down the road. The commander and the sergeant major are running after this guy. This guy literally is so out of it. He gets down and slides under a truck and like closes his eyes, and they're like, "Hey, you need to come out," and he just won't respond to them. Like if I don't talk, they won't know I'm here.
If I
And they
can't see them, they
eventually
can't
like
see me.
pulled him
It's
out.
not the
Yeah.
T-Rex from Jurassic Park.
Dude, seriously, right? So they eventually had to pull him out from underneath the car. And, I mean, it was just, yeah, it was
See,
a
these are
trip.
the kind of glorious stories you never get to hear.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of these are the kind of ones I try to bring up to my students of like, you know, the crazy things you do. Because
Yeah.
when I came back, I eventually became his commander again, which was I was his commander. And then I transferred command. I got stuck with him again. And his mom used to come to my office with childhood photos because he was in jail at this time. Or I'm sorry, he wasn't in jail yet, but he was
And yeah.
confined to base. And she would bring pictures to show me like what a good kid he was. I'm like, I get that, but like, you know, this guy, and he had done a bunch of other things too. Eventually goes AWOL, and he talks to the chaplain. Chaplain goes out to see him. The guy brandishes a gun. Not a good look for the
Ooh,
chaplain. Chaplain
yeah.
comes back. This guy eventually calls me like 2 weeks later, like, "Hey, I want to turn myself in, but I will only turn myself into you." And I'm like, I don't know if this guy's gonna like shoot me in the face when I go meet with him.
Yeah.
But also, like, he had a family, he had a kid, and he had a wife, and no one knew where he was. And I was like, all right, I'm going to go. And I tell my students this story in particular because like I always treated this guy well. Like no matter what he had done, I treated him with respect, like a human. And you know what, this dude, he turned himself over to me, right? And all he cared about was getting a toy for his kid before he went to jail, like for a pretty long time. So I actually took him to Walmart. We got a little something for his kid that I'd be able to give to him. We drive on the base. I drop him at the MP station. He's like, "Can I smoke a cigarette before I go in?" I was like, "Yeah, man, just sit on the stairs. You know, I'll come back." And so I go to the MP station, and Mikey will get this. Like, I tell the MP, he's like, "Hey, I got this dude who's been AWOL for the last, 2-3 weeks out front. Like, he's going to be ready to come in." And they like freak out. They're like, "We got to go." I was like, "Just chill." But like, I couldn't chill him out. Like, they all went and just snatched him up right then and there. And next time I saw him, I mean, he was in handcuffs and leg chains going to the course martial. But moral of the story is like he wasn't a bad person. He was in a bad place, making bad mistakes. This is his third deployment, and like he just needed someone who was like going to listen to him, and did my best there.
Yeah.
You treat people well though. Generally, they'll treat you well and respect, especially as a leader. That's just the thing.
That's the thing is. Bad leaders, man. It's not just like having like a crappy employee that you work with.
Mm-hmm.
You, like people, you like,
going
postal, man. Like people flip.
Absolutely.
I got a buddy of mine who just got done on the trail at Fort Benning. He was a drill sergeant. Just got done at Sand Hill, and that's one of the things he was trying to teach his soldiers was about toxic leadership. Because you know what? We've all had them, dude. Doesn't matter if it was your commanding officer, your butter bar, your NCO. There's always that one guy who
doesn't matter.
just doesn't give a shit.
Yeah.
And it was like, you know what? If you treat people well, they're gonna take care of you.
Dude, like it's too basic of a simplification, but like on the first day of class, I tell everyone, I'm like, look, like if you treat people well, you're like 90% of the way there, right? Like that's it. Just respect people, because like it's so simple, but people don't do it. The power goes to their head, or they're just jerks, right? And in my non-teaching world, where I do research, like that's pretty much all I study is abusive leaders. Like that's like what I've dedicated my research career to, is like the effects of them and how to get rid of them.
So you're still a psychologist, okay?
Oh yeah, no, I do all.
I'm
psychology.
Fascinated by human behavior. That's what I studied for 3 years. Before I decided to just work blue collar because I like working with my hands. But yeah, I'm just fascinated by how do you get there and what makes people tick like that.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's. I mean, if I'm being honest, I mean, I'm in the business college because I like applying psychology. But my training is almost all psychology. The PhD is really just organizational psychology, and that's what I study is what makes abusive supervisors. Are there personality characteristics? Are there things that we can like predict their behavior? Or what are the effects of abusive supervisors? Which we know, like people are going to leave the organization, but there's a lot of other crazy stuff too. Like you have an abusive supervisor, you're almost certainly going to start bullying other people too, right? Either you're going to wilt or you're going to take that anger out at home, which we know from the military too. Like and this is another problem that the military had, it's getting better with, but there's like 22 veteran suicides a day, right?
Yeah.
And it's because people didn't get the kind of care they need. Well, when I came back from my first deployment in 08 or 09, I'd been there for 15 months. It was a long deployment, a lot going on, and I hated my leadership, right? I was a captain at the time, and I felt like my battalion commander, who was lieutenant colonel, squadron commander technically, didn't really care about the soldiers, right? Like I just felt like there was a really he just had an apathy towards the soldiers. All he cared about was getting promoted, right, to full bird and then general.
You're just meat suits for me on my journey.
Yeah. And so you get brought back to the base. You're in like a room, and your family's on the other side of the wall, right? Like in a gym or something like that, waiting for you. Mike remembers this, and so at this point they gave us a survey, right? And it's like, hey, like, how do you feel? Are you feeling angry? And it was like, do you hate your leader? Like, are you angry with your leaders? And I was like, yes. And I was like, on a scale of 1 to 5, I'm like, I'm very angry. Like, I think they don't care about us.
Yeah.
So the psychologist calls me in, right? And we can't see our families yet. And he's like, look, Captain McAllister, he's like, if you want to see your family, you got to check no. And I was like, oh, then I'm not angry, right? Yeah. And this is a real problem. But like, this is why we have veteran suicides.
How unethical.
But that's the thing. It's like you have to be okay, right, to go see your family. And I was like, well, I'm fine then. And I was, but like, think about how many soldiers
but not everybody
were
is.
suicidal. Yeah, and don't tell that. And so for me, like, that was one of my big reasons to go into this field. Yeah, we need to start letting people know. Like, one, if you're a bad leader, you're doing really bad things to people, like long term, right? And two, like, it's okay to be, to say like, hey, I'm jacked up right now, mentally, whatever it is, because you see terrible things, and here on the search and rescue team, we do a lot of good to help people, but you see bad things as well, right? I mean, you see death, and so here I volunteer extra on the resiliency team, which is just if we have a case where like there's a pediatric death or a body recovery, I'm on the team that does the phone calls, right, to make sure people are okay 3 days after, 3 weeks after, because we want to make sure people are doing okay. And like, to me, that's not babying anyone. That's just making sure people are okay. And
it's being
that's
a decent
what we need to do.
Yeah,
exactly.
One of the biggest things for me, post being in the service, was that lovely organization known as the VA. I know we're gonna get to that in a minute because I know you got a story about that. But one of my only experiences, because I only went once, right?
Yeah.
I had my DD-214 with my paperwork and just see, what I was eligible for and what they could help me out with. And they literally looked at like my injuries and shit. They maybe fill out the forms and take the surveys and shit. And when I was done, they're like, we're going to schedule you an appointment in 9 months. Here's a bag of Vicodin and a suicide hotline card. And I was like, well, you guys can go fuck yourself. And I never went back.
Yeah, but that's the problem, right? I mean, that's where we're at with the VA. I mean, the two major stories I always tell is the one we've seen the video where a guy went up to the desk at a VA and was like, hey, I'm thinking about committing suicide. I need help. And like, well, can you come back next week? Because we don't have a slot until then. Right. And this is a person. And this is a pretty, I mean, Mikey's seen the video
remember,
too.
But it just still,
did you see the news report after that video?
I don't recall.
That guy killed himself in the parking lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's not surprising. Like that, and here you have someone going to the VA, which like I don't know if I would go to the VA at this point. Like the story Mike you might remember is I was in like just an accident after I got in the Army. I broke my collarbone and 2 of my fingers, like the bones separated, and so like I went to the VA and I did everything they said, like show up right away, make sure. And even when I was laying on the ground, they were like, the ambulance driver was like, hey, or the ambulance paramedic was like, hey, we're going to take you in. I'm like, hey, is this an emergency? And he's like, I mean, what do you mean? I was like, the VA won't pay for this unless it's an emergency. And like, I will go in a car. Like, you have to tell me this is an emergency. Because that was the VA was like really clear that like they are not going to pay for anything unless it's an emergency, right? So like I'm laying on the ground and I'm like, are you sure this is an emergency, right? So I go there, my arm is all messed up. And they're like, hey, we're going to send you like 5 hours away to get like a consult with this doctor, which is great of them, right? And I was like, well, clearly I can't drive because it was actually this collarbone and these fingers. So like I was just super messed up upper body wise. And they're like, well, we have a van for you. We'll get a van. And I was like, great. Like I'll sit in a van for 5 hours. No worries. And I go there and they're like, well, the van's booked for the next 3 months. So we'll just have to wait for your appointment. And I was like, like my fingers will be like healed by then. And I was like,
Yeah,
forget
I'll
it.
be
So like,
deformed. Get the frick out of
Yeah.
here, dude.
and like, I mean, I feel like just to show you, how it works. So 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Like my fingers go up, but on this hand, 1, 2, 3, like that's as high as it goes until I bring both fingers up, like if I had waited any longer, all the fingers would have been jacked up, and so you eventually just give up on them,
Not
because
service
they don't
related,
want to
bro.
help. Yeah, it should be service related. Yeah, but no, it's not. So yeah,
Oh
you're
my
toast.
gosh, dude, that's
Well,
So
ridiculous.
The percentage scale is what gets me. Is
Yeah.
when they look at you, and I had a buddy of mine who was a 50 cal gunner on one of our trucks, right? And he fired that thing so many times, he has 90% nerve damage in his hands.
Oh, hands. Okay, yeah,
Like he can't use his fingers. Like
Sure.
they just don't work.
yeah,
And the VA looked at him and said, well, you didn't get any combat related injuries or service related injuries. So they
Yeah.
rated his now mind you, he can't use his fingers. Like he can't feed himself and shit. Like he can't
Oh
wipe his own
my
ass.
gosh, dude.
They gave him a 21% injury rating. So they're not going to pay for anything.
yeah. And there's some magic numbers, right? Because you hit 50% is when they start actually doing some real work to make sure that you're accommodated, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, the way they do percentages
What a
is
joke, dude.
problematic.
It makes
Yeah.
me sick to my stomach.
Yeah.
That's just freaking unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where you always hear about how the VA was when the Vietnam vets came back,
Yeah.
and then I do think it got better for a while, but I think whenever we have a war, like everything just collapses. Whether it's a hiring like all these people who don't know what's going on or whatever, but it's a disaster.
Yeah.
So do you know about the scandal that happened here in Arizona?
Was this with the needles? Probably
No,
not. Then it's
this
not about
is
the.
about- No, this is something different.
Okay,
But I know
go
what
for
you're
it.
talking about. So after all of these veterans, like the 22 a day, and a bunch of people weren't getting services, and they had like all this paperwork that said these guys were getting seen by doctors and getting their pharmaceuticals, their medications and shit, and none of it was happening. So a bunch of the veterans got together and started like writing congressmen and shit, right? So they led an investigation into the Arizona State Veterans Affairs, the VA, and it turned out that something like 85-90% of people who worked in the VA during that time were embezzling funds and forging documents.
Checks out.
Oh.
You
So there were
scumbags,
so many
dude.
cases of it, they couldn't fire anybody. So these people still have fucking jobs.
That's unreal.
Yeah.
It's not surprising, but it's unreal.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's what I'm
yeah.
saying. Like, it's not surprising because like that we're just like forced to accept this absolute trash, dude. It's
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure Sharon can attest to this fact. When you're in the service, anytime you get injured or sick or whatever, doc is going to tell you like 3 things.
Motrin.
Motrin.
Oh yeah.
Change your socks.
Yep.
And drink water.
Yep.
That's it.
What?
That's true.
Absolutely.
That's how you. I mean, like, so yeah. 2 quick stories on like Army
Change
medical.
your
Like,
sock. The
Oh, yeah,
drink
change
water,
your-
I get. Yeah, drink water. We know that, but what the?
I mean, that's it. Like, the problem is, like, as a pilot, we would never tell anyone anything. Like, if you were hurt, you didn't say a word because you didn't want to lose your flight status, right? So people
Yeah.
are definitely going with injuries for a long time without mentioning it because you don't want to get pulled, right? So that's your first thing. So like, we never mentioned any kind of injuries for the most part. But you also have a lot of like medics and like people who are not doctors doing a lot of medical advice, which is what leads to the Motrin,
Yeah.
change your socks and water. And like, I remember one time, like I had like an ingrown toenail or something my first year in the Army. And they're like, hey, we're going to cut out your toenail. Right. And so like, they just like do a shot. And it's like, your feet are super sensitive. Right. And they're going to like put anesthesia on there. And so this guy takes a needle that's like this long, puts it in between my like big toe and your second toe. Right.
Ha cha
Which is-
cha.
But even that's fine. But he basically then while it's in there, he
Yeah.
moves it.
Yes,
Starts
dude.
working it. Yeah.
And I was like, this is and I can still remember the pain. And like,
Yep.
and another time I was skiing and some out of control skier hit me from behind and they thought I broke my jaw. And so I get back to the hospital and my wife had driven me to the hospital and they were there. Right. And Mike will remember this, like, doctors in the Army often are there for practice, right? Like for their next stepping stone, right? And so the surgeon, it's like 2 a.m. and the surgeons are there. Like they literally, they have their scalpels like ready to cut me open. And there's this civilian doctor who's like, hey, we just got this new machine. Let me scan your face. And he realizes it's not broken. And they were visibly upset that they could not sew my jaw shut. Like they were like, you could just see them. It was like someone just stepped on their puppy. They're like, oh. And I, to this day, if they had not done that, they had gotten in there, saw it wasn't broken, they would have wired that shut in a heartbeat just to get the rep. Like that was like, and I was like, I am never getting hurt again. It was bonkers.
Gosh, dude, that's a
If
nightmare,
you go to the hospital
dude.
on base, it's literally like going to a fucking barber college.
Yeah, 100%.
Oh my
Like,
gosh,
literally like a
dude,
barber
that
college.
is terrifying.
Yeah.
The other
Yeah.
thing I find that's fucking hilarious is, so once you go, if you're like an MP and you graduate MP school, you're still a fucking private,
Absolutely.
but you're still a military cop.
Yep.
So you want to see the most ridiculous shit, go watch what the MPs do. Like they will straight arrest you for going like 2 miles over the speed limit because they can.
Oh my gosh, nope. I already had enough problems with police. That would have been bad
Dude,
for me.
Military cops are like next level,
Dude.
dude.
Yeah.
Straight next level.
They get pretty upset. I used to run at night because I would fly mostly night missions. And so I'd wake up and try to go for a run or run after I landed. And we just had barbed wire around the area. So I would like run along the barbed wire, but I was on an Air Force base because we needed a runway. And they had like sensors that would check if someone was like messing with the fence.
Yeah.
But I'm running along the fence and I would like set off sensor after
Like
sensor. And so it looks like there's like, it's like a zombie hordes with all they can see because like they just see like 10 sensors going off in a mile long stretch. And the MPs would roll up with like 3 Humvees and they're like, ready to roll. And they just see me. They're so disappointed. But like they would put you in the vehicle like you can't run anymore. And I was like, what am I supposed to do? Like you're just and Mike, you just sit on base. And you're like, what do I do? And they eventually, oh yeah.
The worst shit ever because you're literally sitting there doing. See, when I was in the service, when I was deployed, that's 2002 in Afghanistan. Like,
yeah, you didn't have barbed wire. You were just like wherever you rolled up to and laid down.
we had a fob that was made of fucking like scavenged plywood and fucking sandbags.
Sure.
Yeah.
And that was like our Humvees had snap doors.
Yeah.
But that is the most like both terrifying and monotonous shit ever because when you're not out on missions, you're not doing shit. You're fucking sitting there. And like where I was, there was like no fucking electricity. We didn't have generators. We didn't have any of that shit. It was like whatever we could build,
Yep.
One of the weird experiences, like, so you'd be on guard duty and shit. And these guys would walk out at a fucking night, like a Michael Jackson Thriller video. And the only word they knew in English were like MRE. That's all they would repeat. And you'd fucking chuck an MRE at them and they'd fucking scavenge it and like walk back off into the mist and shit.
Yeah. Dude, I mean, that's, talking about the psychology side, like Johnsy was mentioning about, like, that to me, like, I flew my whole time in Iraq, right? And you're like in super control up there, right? Because you're kind of the trump card on the battlefield.
Yeah.
But I did a couple trips on MRAPs to go meet with like police chiefs and things like that. And I'll tell you, like the people who had to do that, like you, especially, well, you weren't even MRAPs, you were just an unarmored Humvees.
Yeah.
But like that, you're just waiting to get blown up, right? And I think like the mental stress of that, and people have like PTSD, is because like you're sitting there like you have no control, right? And like that
just
was
waiting for the world
me.
to end, dude.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like people don't understand. Like it's not necessarily the shooting, right? Because in a shootout, you have control over the situation,
Absolutely,
somewhat, right? Like you feel some control of your destiny. In that MRAP, you're like, if anything happens, there's nothing I can do, and exactly, right? Like there's nothing you can do, and like the stress that's the real problem. Even with like my wife and I, like she deployed before I did. So between my wife and I, we did 3 years in Iraq in our first 5 years of marriage. So we never saw each other, right? and we were never deployed together, right? So we were always separate.
Hey, cheers to
And-
you guys, man.
Yeah, it was bonkers. But the thing is, like, being deployed wasn't as bad as being home and knowing that like any minute we're going to get another deployment order, right? And that was what sucked, because you're like, hey, we're home, and I think we were home for like a month after our first deployment, where it was like, hey, you're going to deploy again. And I was like, but you have that, and you hear about it, you start hearing the rumors, and you're like, this is done. And it kind of ruins that year you're home, because you're like, I'm just leaving again for another year, you know?
Yeah,
and it
because
was,
you're always sitting on fucking pins and needles. You're always on edge to like,
exactly.
what's going to happen?
And that's the thing. Yeah, and that's what wears on people.
I'm really glad. That was my exact thing I wanted to bring up, was the psychology of that. Whether it's at home waiting to go back, or sitting around base with nothing to do, waiting to go out on patrol or whatever, or we're off in the bush somewhere waiting for a bomb to drop or people to jump out and start fighting. And it's just sitting waiting for, I don't know, the most fucked up shit ever. And it's just, like that. And then you go home, or you say like, man, hey, I'm not doing good. Or like, hey, we don't talk about that. You have to say you're fine. Go see your family. Like, I'm fine. Like, and you just like, dude, no wonder your brains deteriorate.
I'm sure Brother Turn can attest to this. You know the biggest lie all of us tell, and we tell it on a regular basis?
I'm fine.
Yeah, I'm fine. It's okay.
Yeah.
No, that's cool.
And we're and we're totally chill. Absolutely. You know, I do the fucking the buddy checks, man. I fucking text or call some of my brothers on a regular basis. And anytime that text comes back where it says, I'm okay, I'm fine, I'll pick up the phone and go, don't bullshit me. I know you're not. What's going on?
Speaking of a fellow vet, what's up, Willow?
Hey, brother Willow. Willow was actually in the Navy back in the day, so we're going to let that slide.
Since they're a sponsor, we'll let them slide.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, man, here we go. Here we go. It's awesome.
Dude, I'm the kind of person, like, I'll see someone wearing a Navy shirt, and I'll be like, sorry to hear it. You know what I mean? So, like, I'll have dudes like, oh, my brother's in the Navy. I'm like, I'm so sorry. That's my first answer. Condolences.
That's awesome.
But, hey, they're still brothers in arms, so, you know.
No, yeah, absolutely.
And, you know, that's the funny thing is, like, we're going to talk shit all day long about, you know, the Navy not being a service and the Air Force being a business, because that's all they fucking really are.
The greatest stories are the Air Force hangars where they're having like prime rib or whatever.
Yeah.
You guys are
the mystical,
down
magical stories of the Air Force defect, bro.
That's so crazy.
Dude, it's so true though. Like I was on an Air Force base, right? And so it was primarily Air Force, right? And we had a couple Army units. And so here we are walking around in, you know, billion-degree heat. We're in full battle rattle, right? So we have our body armor on.
Okay.
I have an M4. I have, you know, I also have an M9. So like I am like fully like, you have everything. You're fully like, you know, sometimes I have my flight bag. And the Air Force are walking around in shorts and a t-shirt, right? Like seriously, just an Air Force. Yeah. And I was like, why? And like, why do you get to do this? And the Air Force, for as much as I make fun of them, they're smart enough. They're like, look, like if anything happens, you're going to get killed. We're just going to take your rifle and handgun. Like, and they're right. There's going to be enough of us dead. They're just going to take one of our rifles and go for it, and and call it good, right? And it's amazing. It's a different world.
It was funny because I was talking to my coworker who was in the Navy, a sonar guy in the Navy, and I was like, I was looking because like, hey, I'll be straight up. The mechanic part of the maintenance side at my job, they work a lot harder than us electricians, a lot harder. And like, I look back and I go, man, sometimes I feel bad. Like, should we just stay and help him? And he turned to me, and I'll never forget this in my life. He goes, and I'm just bummed that I heard it so late. He goes, hey, pick your rate, pick your fate, bud. Hey, you know what? But yeah, that's why I chose to be an electrician, because the electricians get paid a lot.
Yeah.
Like I was tired of working really hard for crumbs. You know?
Heck yeah.
I'm not living in the lap
man.
of luxury, but you know.
Absolutely.
No, totally, man. It makes total sense.
So like I get it, like I get why all the crap talk, but it's like you can't blame them. They're in the same war zone you are, but they're walking in t-shirts and hanging out.
They're in the same war zone. They're like, they were, I mean, it was, they just volunteered for their deployments. Like their deployments were 3 or 6 months, and they got to choose to go, right? Like we were just there was no choice,
you're
right?
going for a year.
Yeah, but you know what? Truth be told, like if my son wants to go in the military, I'm going to push him Air Force because to
Right,
Mikey's
yeah.
point, you come out with transferable skills. Like the Army, you only got a couple choices, and other than that, you're coming out and you're going to be like a security guard, right? Like, I mean, there's a lot of things you can do, but like
Cop, yeah,
in terms
yeah,
of like,
I get it,
like
yeah.
that's the skills you're getting. You get leadership skills, but like Air Force, it's like, oh, I'm learning how to push buttons. I'm learning how to do this. Like whatever it is, like they're getting a real skill, and it's like, go for it, man. Like,
Yeah.
the pilots
Absolutely.
are probably the ones who get the least transferable skill. They can only be a pilot, but like everyone else in the Air Force, they're getting like real skills, doing things. They come out and they get good jobs. So
Absolutely.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
My buddy's son, he went to the Army and he came out. He's like some big programmer, some crazy crap.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, like it's changing now. Like there's a lot.
Yeah,
more.
I'm definitely.
The Army is
It's probably
modernizing.
totally different from when you guys were in there. I bet.
You gotta
Totally.
realize,
I'm sure.
bro,
Yeah.
I got done in the service February. It'll be 20 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Wait,
I'm only.
so 02.
I'm
Yeah,
10
so-
years this year. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. See, the Navy vet I work with, he got out in '90.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Little different.
And he's been like, yeah, totally different for him, even comparison to people now, for sure.
Oh yeah.
Back in the good old BDU
Which
days.
is like really with anything. Construction's the same way. I'm sure teaching's completely different than it was 20 years ago. Besides all the political nonsense, I'm just talking the way society has moved along.
Sure.
Yeah.
In this
Absolutely.
weird way.
That's one of the things.
Like,
I've been talking to the kids recruiter and shit, so they don't have to shine their boots anymore. I was real mad about that. I'm like,
what?
not a single. They're all friggin' the tan ones.
Chloroform? Oh, they're desert boots. Okay,
Yeah.
And you know what?
They
don't do the shark attacks anymore at basic training.
That's like critical. That's critical insulation.
Oh no, you can't
how to keep calm.
Explain what that is, because that's just absolute abuse, and I can't believe we ever did that.
So when you go to basic training, right? You go from your hometown, you go to the reception battalion. That's where you get all your shots and to do your paperwork in the deer's office, give you like your dental checkup, shit like that.
And they shave your head like in the Army now, like Pauly Shore showed us.
Sure, exactly.
That's a good throwback.
Yeah. And then your basic training company picks you up in these big cattle cars. At least they did when I was in the Army. And they drive you to your basic training company, right? And then they give you a set of orders. And ours was that you had to line up all the duffel bags end to end in a straight line, which is completely impossible. So when you fuck up doing that task, it's called 0 day. So this doesn't count towards your basic combat training. This is when you get your billet, where you get like your wall locker and your bed, and they show you where you're going to eat at the defect, shit like that. And basically all you're doing is getting yelled at and doing push-ups, right? So what the shark attack was on 0 day.
Sounds like jail, bro. Not that I've ever been or anything.
So like the shark attack, when you would screw up, every drill sergeant in the entire company would encircle you and start screaming and yelling and shit. Back when I was in basic training, they could smack you around. Like if you were stupid enough to like lip off, they'd backhand you.
You know what? I think we need to bring that back. Rulers, spankings in schools, and backhands. Like, come on. No. I don't condone violence. I don't condone violence. YouTube.
Some of the stuff I agree with. Some of it I don't.
Oh, for sure. Because you hear some
When
pretty
I qualified with the
stories.
M16 A2 rifle, tells you how long ago this was. We had iron sights. That's it. Now they have ACOG sight systems.
Absolutely.
I disagree with that. What happens when you bump your scope?
Are you saying they don't do any iron sight marksmanship?
Not
Oh, that's
anymore.
brutal.
No way.
You got to have iron sights. I mean, that's just
Like,
that's day one.
yeah, what's going to happen when you drop your rifle and break your scope?
Hey,
Yeah.
real quick, David wanted to know, so you guys didn't get swim call like us in the Navy?
No. We definitely did not.
Yeah. No.
You know what I do still have? Let's see if I can find it. So
Robert
did you
gave
do
a shout out to AFES too. I don't know if you saw that comment.
Yeah, right here. I heard you say it real quick. I wasn't gonna let it slip too
Yeah,
far.
no worries.
So did you do the Warrior Tower, bro?
I don't think so. Which was it?
That's when you got to
In case
rappel
of
off of the tower, and it's like the big jungle gym.
We did do rappelling. We did it off a cliff though, so it wasn't because it wasn't as standard as at West Point. So we were at
Real
the
deal.
north, so
Right on.
some mountains there. But I know what
So-
you're talking about.
You get one of these that has seen way better days.
Is that your ID card? I can't see what it is.
That's the
Oh, is that the
Warrior
Soldier's
card you
Creed?
get from doing. Yeah, it's got the Army Corps values on one side and then the
Yeah.
Soldier's Creed on the other.
Very cool.
Soldier's Creed, absolutely. No, I had that card too. Yeah, leadership.
You guys have it
loyalty, duty,
memorized? Let's
respect.
hear it.
So they've changed it.
Oh,
20
Loyalty,
years
duty,
ago, bro.
respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, personal courage.
Personal courage.
Bam.
let's
Yeah, I
go.
remember
There
that.
it is.
The Army Corps values. Yeah.
Oh, what's the
Yeah,
soldier's creed?
I couldn't do the soldier. I couldn't do the
Oh,
Soldier's
okay.
Creed anymore.
Me
Not a
neither.
chance.
Okay.
Not a chance.
No. That's like when you go to the gas chamber, they made us do that. Recite your name, rank, serial number, hometown, and then the Army Corps values.
Yep.
Okay.
And you don't make it through half
Like
of
the
it though,
scout
because you
motto
start.
and the scout
coughing
oath
it up.
and all that same deal.
You know
Yeah.
what?
I wonder where they got that from.
I was one of like the 4 guys who made it all the way through everything in the gas chamber.
Wow.
And
Are you
here's the
immune to it?
I built up a tolerance, dude. When I was
Okay.
you might not remember this, but in New York there was something called the Bed-Stuy riots
I
back
don't
in
know
like
it.
the early to mid 90s. And this was like a fucked up situation. There was a rabbinical student who was trying to get home before sundown on the Sabbath,
Yeah.
and he got into a car accident and this little girl died.
Oh God.
Well, she was African American, so all the local Crips found a rabbi and nailed them to a tree.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was brutal.
bad.
So Bed-Stuy blew up into like a riot.
Oh wow.
So NYPD's response to that was to shoot fucking rubber bullets and throw tear gas in
Tear
every
gas
apartment
everywhere,
building
yeah.
possible.
Fair.
It was
me-
like Rodney King bullshit.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's not great.
but you know, surviving that kind of shit and then getting maced by cops in my interesting youth, shall we say. By the time I did the gas chamber, I was one of the guys who kind of built up a tolerance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
There's always
yeah.
a few of
I've
them.
seen this before. Let's go.
Yeah, I don't think I even got through the what is it, like name, rank, whatever it was, and then you just
Yeah.
start coughing. You're just like, everything's toast.
It's not
But
running. We had a guy.
there were a few people who could just go through it though. Like they were just totally immune, and they would just be like, "Yeah, what's up?" And I'm like, "How do you?" It's just crazy.
Yeah, it's
The guy in front of me
Savage.
came out, and our XO was standing there, like laughing at people, and this dude threw up all over his boots,
Yes.
and they made him
Yes.
go back in.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Yeah. See,
So
that's what's
good.
funny. It's like you always hear like they in all these shows, like cop shows or lawyer shows. There's always these tons of stories about hazing or episodes about hazing, or you hear them over time. Like, oh, something bad happened at this college. Like they were hazing. Like it's nothing, nothing compared to what you guys
Bro,
even
and this
do
is
to
just
each
basic
other.
training.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. And then you guys like deploy and do shit to each other that's just unreal.
I will say that one time, I will not reveal any names, but there were a lot of goats all around that were just like out there. And so someone landed and picked up a very baby goat and brought it in the cockpit. And then while one of the other pilots was sleeping, just let it into his room. So this guy woke up to a goat licking his face.
Okay, I thought
It
that
just
was
like-
going a
No.
completely different direction.
I know where you
Whew.
thought it was going, but yeah,
That's a
pretty-
good
pretty
save,
good
bro.
ending, but like just woke up with the goat in his room, just licking his face. I mean, we did some other things too, but like that was it's nonstop. And
Yeah.
going back to the psychology thing, like there's some research looking at workplace hazing. It's like it's not always bad. Like if you do
No,
it right,
absolutely
there's
not.
camaraderie, right? Like
Yeah, that
and they're yeah.
that's what I say. There's something to like how how we grew up in construction and like back in the day, or like how you guys went through in the army, and like when they talked nothing but crap to you.
Oh yeah.
Like your sister was a whore. Your mom should have swallowed you. Like that's just like hurry up, you piece of crap. You're there like the worst stuff. And you just listened and it's like whatever, Dan. What like, F you too, whatever. And it's just like we talk so much crap at work to each other. Like people would like if the HR lady walked in, we'd all be in so much trouble. It's ridiculous.
Oh yeah.
Like violence, sexual bullying, like it's unbelievable, and we're all sitting like hysterically laughing about it, and we all so like when this guy's working, like I'm like, hey, I'm done, do you need help? It's not like I ain't gonna go fucking talk to that guy.
But that's how you build those friendships quicker, right? And there are some people who can't do it, and that's what ruins it.
Absolutely is. Absolutely is.
But I think that's
fast,
the thing.
Guys.
Like,
weed them out fast.
Weed them out. Yeah, but like you can, if you get that kind of camaraderie, and like that's all the stories we've talked about, like that's what you remember, right? Like those are the good times, and like, and I don't know, that's there's a place for it. There's a lot of good research on it that I'd like to add to, but it's a hard thing to study because most people in a civilian context who haven't been hazed, like do like a caricature of hazing, right? Like they see an army movie, they go see Full Metal Jacket, and they're like, oh, that's what it needs to be like. And then they like blow that up over the top and they screw it up, right? And
and it's like, dude, it's not anything like that.
It really is a friendship thing. But when people take it as like something else, it falls apart.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you the story about that because we had this guy in basic training. I'll never forget him because everyone called him Sick Call. On day one, after 0 day, he walked up to the drill sergeant, first formation, with a sick call slip.
No.
And the drill sergeant looked at him and laughed, but they have to do it.
First day?
They have to take him.
Oh, so you're done. That's the end of your career.
This guy was brilliant because what he did was he bullshitted the doctor, so he was on profile, so he didn't have to do any of the hard shit. So anytime
he skated through basic,
it was brilliant. So anytime like we'd have to do ruck marches or fucking warrior everything that was non-essential to graduating, he would be in the DFAC on KP duty, right?
No,
and then like the day before, like he'd have to qual with the M16 or U.S. weapons or bayonet training, shit like that. He would get the doctor to take him off profile, so he would actually pass all the requirements, but never have to do any of the hard work.
Unbelievable.
So one time he was on KP duty, and it was like some officer's birthday or some shit. So they had a bunch of sheet cakes made up for everybody, right? This motherfucker stole an entire sheet cake and snuck it back into the barracks and stashed it until lights out. So every time someone was on guard duty, and he'd post it up in the fucking changing bay. So anytime you would go through and do your sweeps and checks and shit, he'd be like, yo, you want some cake? And he had like plates and forks and
Who is this man?
Who is a legend?
Dude, yeah.
And he fucking graduated.
Like Lex Luthor strategy, dude. That is brilliant.
And even at graduation, the drill sergeants walk up to him and like they respect him. They were like, that was some brilliant bullshit, dude.
That's what I'm saying. And
none of us thought about that.
That's another end of the human brain that fascinates me. Is like, how did you come up with so geniusly circumventing everything that no one did? Literally, people would pay thousands of dollars to learn how to do a quarter of what that guy did.
Yeah.
It's
true.
I love it, dude.
Like
when I see those people, I always feel like if I tried half of that, I'd get in trouble immediately.
Yeah, me too. Exactly. Because I have.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like you wouldn't see this dude for like 4 or 5 days. Like he'd just literally be on KP duty, and he'd like make it for formation and shit. And then you look over, and he's in the foxhole next to you with his rifle for BRM and shit, and you're like.
Dude,
Oh, that's
we need
amazing.
to find that guy somehow, some way. Find us. If that's you in that story, reach out to the Dude Network
Like,
because
for real.
I need to know what you're doing now.
Right? That guy's probably a millionaire by now.
There's no.
I think he's in crypto, 100% in crypto, somehow making it
Bro,
work.
I bet he's in the civilian sector, but has nothing but government contracts.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's that guy who does nothing really and never actually really turns in anything, but somehow keeps
But the
getting
government's still giving him a
$1
billion-dollar contracts.
Yeah.
I wish I
Exactly.
was smart enough to get in somehow, some way, and BS my way into that because, dude. And then here's the best part: they don't ever want to admit that, like, oh, we accidentally just like blew $30 billion on this crap that we never got anything for. So they just like
Built
pay
it up.
you. They just like
Yeah.
pay you to like never say anything. Keep like figure something else out. Figure something else out that's gonna work.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I would love to be that think tank guy who just sits
I
around
got
playing.
like, you. This show
staring at my
is
phone.
that.
I need to get the paycheck though, bro.
Yeah, reach out to us. Reach out to us. We got
For
you.
real. For real.
We're trying to make moves here on the Dude Network tonight.
Absolutely. So, being as we've been here for hour and a half,
Yeah.
it's about time. So, is there anything parting words you'd like to impart our viewers with, Brother Charn?
I mean, Rita always said before, be a good leader, treat people well, do well for everyone, just not for yourself, but for them too, man. That's my whole goal in life right now is get students and people to, take care of others. That's all we need to do, make the world a better place.
Awesome.
Absolutely, brother. Absolutely. Well,
Excellent.
I think that wraps it up for another Thursday night episode of Random Thoughts with the Rev.
Dude, great conversation, man.
Big thank you to
this has been one of my favorites.
Charn for giving up an hour and a half of his day to hang out with us.
No, thank you guys for having me. I
greatly
super appreciate it. I've it's wanted to meet John Z since I started seeing the show, and
oh no
Mikey,
way.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was talking with Mikey.
Right
I asked Mikey, I was like, it's not just gonna be you. John Z's gonna be there, right? I mean, you can testify to that text from a couple days ago.
Let's go.
But yeah, it's always been good hanging out with Mikey at Scouts. Made the first year bearable when it was just Tiger Cubs.
Amen.
And yeah, I appreciate the time, guys. It's great being here.
Absolutely, man.
Thank you again. We appreciate your time, man.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for watching. Rev, as always, it's been a pleasure. Charn, thanks again.
You got it, guys. Thank you.
We will see you guys next week.
Absolutely.
Here on the Dude Network. Don't forget to tune in tomorrow. I can't remember the guest, Brewster.
The Prescott Kids, bro.
The Prescott Kid. That's right. I'm sorry, but I think there's two. So
there is.
So,
we got a secondary special guest.
Yeah, there's something special. Tony's brewing something up, but anyway, tune in tomorrow night and have a good week.